Let me begin by asking a question not often spoken aloud. What rules you when no one is watching? Most men say logic, duty, or principle. But if you look more closely at how your hands move when you're angry, how your speech sharpens when afraid, how your posture crumbles under shame, you'll see the truth. Emotion governs, and when left untrained, it rules like a tyrant. That is why the ancients feared not foreign invasion or failed harvests more than they feared the untrained soul. For what is an empire to a man who cannot rule his own reactions? The Stoics were not monks sitting on high, untouched by life. They were men in war, in politics, in exile, in grief. Their strategy was not to silence emotion, but to master it, to place it in proper rank, to understand its signal, but not to obey its every command. You do not become wise by ignoring what you feel. You become wise by deciding what those feelings mean and what they are allowed to do next. When emotion rules, reason retreats. Imagine a battlefield, not of swords, but of thought. You are faced with an insult, a betrayal, a threat, and from the shadows, emotion surges. Anger with clenched fists, fear with racing breath, jealousy with quick speech, pride with the need to be right. Each one rushes the throne of your mind, fighting to sit where reason once ruled. And in most men, they win. Why? Because reason is quiet, and emotion is loud. Reason takes time. Emotion moves fast. Reason weighs outcomes. Emotion reacts to pain. And so, unless you've trained, you serve the first feeling strong enough to take your reins. That is not freedom. That is slavery in disguise. But the Stoic trains differently. He does not pretend the storm isn't there. He simply builds walls within himself that no storm can cross. Recognize first, you are not your first reaction. It begins with a single distinction. You are not your first reaction. Anger arises, that is not you. Fear creeps in, that is not you. Shame tightens your chest, that too is not you. These are impressions, biological echoes, nervous sparks reacting to threat, memory, or ego. But what comes next? That is the part you own. You pause, you observe, you ask, is this anger signaling an injustice or just my pride? Is this fear a real threat or a projection? Is this envy pointing to something I truly value or simply reminding me of insecurity? This practice of pausing between impulse and response is the birth of mastery. It's not flashy. It's not public. It doesn't win applause. But it is the first and most vital move in reclaiming sovereignty over your soul. Why modern men fail to master emotion. Our ancestors were never promised comfort. They were trained for hardship, emotional, physical, and social. But today, we are taught the opposite, that the highest aim is comfort, validation, and instant emotional expression. Speak your truth. Don't bottle it up. If you feel it, it must be real. This is not wisdom. This is emotional indulgence packaged as authenticity. The Stoic does not repress, but neither does he romanticize emotion. He treats it like fire, necessary, powerful, dangerous. Uncontrolled fire burns homes. Controlled fire warms them. And so, the Stoic builds form around his emotional life. He gives it space to be felt, but boundaries to be expressed. He does not speak in anger. He does not negotiate in fear. He does not decide in envy. He waits until the storm has passed, and then, only then, he speaks with authority. Seneca's warning and Marcus's practice. Seneca once wrote that anger is a temporary madness, and like madness, it persuades us of false things, that violence will bring peace, that shouting will restore order, that shame will change behavior, that retreat will protect us. It feels true, but it always betrays us. Marcus Aurelius, ruling over a collapsing empire, wrote daily to remind himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He did not write this from a villa. He wrote it from a war camp, because he knew, if the emperor cannot master himself, the empire has already fallen. Self-control is not suppression, it is alignment. Let us be clear, to master emotion is not to kill it. A Stoic does not become cold. He becomes clear. He loves deeply, but without desperation. He grieves openly, but without losing function. He feels anger, but does not hand it the reins. He allows emotion its voice, but not its vote. Because self-control, in the Stoic sense, is not suppression. It is alignment. You align what you feel with what you know. You align your impulse with your intention. You align your momentary pain with your long-term virtue. And you do so without theatrics, without complaint, without the need for validation. The first strategy: daily emotional inventory. If you want to master your emotions, you must first know them. So, the Stoic begins each day with preparation, and ends each day with review. Morning: what might test me today? Evening: what tested me? How did I respond? What will I do differently next time? This is not journaling for sentiment. It is training for war. You are building a map of your own mind, learning its traps, understanding its rhythms. You begin to see patterns, that you're most irritable when hungry, that your envy flares after too much time online, that your sadness disguises itself as sarcasm, and with each discovery, you become less ruled. Not because you have less emotion, but because you have greater vision. And what you see, you can influence, and what you influence, you can command, and what you command, you no longer fear. That is where we begin. Not with silence, not with force, but with awareness. The fire burns. The Stoic watches it, then decides how it will be used. Once a man learns to observe his emotions rather than obey them, he enters a new phase of strength. But observation alone is not mastery. The Stoic does not merely notice the fire within, he learns to build a forge from it, to convert impulse into insight and energy into intention. And this transformation requires more than reflection. It requires discipline. If Block 1 was the unveiling of the internal empire, then this is the coronation of the inner governor, the part of you tasked with rule. It does not shout. It does not panic. It speaks quietly, but with final authority. Understanding the dual mind, the horse and the rider. The Stoics often spoke of reason as the charioteer and emotion as the horse. Both are needed, but when the horse leads, the chariot veers into chaos. Your impulses are fast, strong, and sometimes beautiful. They move with raw power. But it is your rational will, trained through philosophy, that must hold the reins. So the Stoic practices the art of separation. This is what I feel. This is what I know. This is what I will do. He trains himself to notice this gap, then to widen it, and within that widening gap between sensation and action is born the space for virtue. The strategy of delay. The Stoics believed in the tactic of delay. Wait 5 breaths before speaking in anger. Wait a full night's sleep before writing the letter. Wait 1 full walk before making a decision under pressure. Because emotion is a wave. It peaks, then it falls. And those who act on the peak often regret the crash. The disciplined man does not rush to solve the feeling. He allows the nervous system to calm. He allows the story in his head to quiet, and only then, when clarity has returned, does he act. This is not avoidance, it is timing. Wisdom is not just knowing what to do, it is knowing when to do it. The role of language. How we name is how we feel. A key Stoic insight. Language shapes emotion. If you call it a disaster, you will feel disaster. If you call it a lesson, you will feel capable. If you call it an insult, you arm your ego. If you call it a misunderstanding, you open the door to compassion. The words you choose become the world you live in. So the Stoic is precise with language, especially the language used in the privacy of his own mind. He does not catastrophize. He does not label people as enemies. He does not say, "I can't handle this." He says, "This is difficult. I will respond well." And over time, this internal discipline reshapes his emotional terrain. The storms still come, but the sea is not so easily stirred. The Stoic filter. What is and is not in my control. One of the most transformative Stoic tactics is the control filter. Is this within my control? If yes, I act with all my virtue. If no, I release my grip and prepare my response. This filter can dismantle 90% of emotional suffering. Worry about another's opinion? Not in your control. Anger at the weather? Not in your control. Despair over aging? Not in your control. But your response to criticism, your decision to carry an umbrella, your effort to live well despite age, those are yours. And the Stoic masters his emotions not by denying them, but by placing them within this framework again and again until it becomes instinct. This is not denial, this is dominion. Anchoring with virtue, a moral North Star. When emotion clouds the mind, the Stoic reaches for his compass, the 4 cardinal virtues. Wisdom, what is true? Courage, what must I face? Justice, what is fair to others? Temperance, what is the right amount? He lets these questions lead him, not how he feels in the moment. This is why the Stoic can grieve while remaining grounded. This is why he can feel fear and still move forward. This is why he can sense offense and still choose not to retaliate. Virtue becomes the fixed star by which the emotional ship is steered. The power of voluntary discomfort. Finally, the Stoics trained emotional resilience through voluntary hardship. They practiced going without. They faced cold, hunger, solitude. They imagined worst-case scenarios not to dwell in negativity, but to strip fear of its surprise. And in doing so, they discovered that comfort dulls the emotional blade, that luxury weakens the inner resolve, that when you've chosen discomfort on your own terms, the unexpected loses its power. This practice does not make one emotionless, it makes one prepared. Because the man who has chosen suffering in practice is not undone when life chooses it for him. He does not flinch, he simply breathes, and he acts, not with the desperation of one seeking escape, but with the steadiness of one who has walked this ground before. Now, some exciting news. Our channel now offers a members club. By joining it, you'll unlock exclusive benefits, deeper content dives, and personal insights. Join us on this journey, and let's build a meaningful life together. And I also humbly ask you to leave a comment, as it helps my channel immensely. If you do not know what to comment, just write "better every day." So I know you reached this far. And don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Also, I've linked some books on Stoicism that helped me become the man I am today, and will also help you achieve a Stoic mindset. It is one thing to govern yourself in silence, to keep your mind clean when alone, to watch your thoughts in the early morning stillness. But mastery is tested not in solitude, but in relationship. It is tested when others do not behave as they should, when betrayal slams through the chest, when misunderstanding stains your intentions, when love awakens fears you thought you'd buried. These are the arenas where the Stoics' emotional discipline must expand, not to shield the heart, but to keep it sovereign while remaining open. When you are betrayed, the Stoic response. Betrayal, real or perceived, is one of the most emotionally destabilizing human experiences. The heart tightens, the stomach sinks, the mind scrambles to make sense of the fracture. How could they do this? Why didn't I see it coming? What does this say about me? The untrained man responds with vengeance or self-destruction. The Stoic breathes and asks, is this pain the product of their act or my expectations? He rewinds the tape, not to assign blame, but to locate where he handed over emotional control. He sees where he invested without understanding, assumed without inquiry, or demanded from someone what they were never capable of giving. He does not deny the ache, but he refuses to let it warp his reason. He mourns what was lost. Then he realigns with what remains, his character, because the betrayal of another does not compel the betrayal of self. Conflict, the Stoic does not escalate. He clarifies. In conflict, the average man seeks victory. The Stoic seeks truth. He does not need to win the argument if winning requires distortion, volume, or pride. He holds his emotions as a man would hold a sword in a negotiation, visible but sheathed. When insulted, he does not react. When misunderstood, he clarifies. When attacked, he remains composed, not because he is weak, but because his identity is not up for debate. And this restraint does not come from passivity. It comes from orientation. Is my aim to prove I'm right, or to preserve my virtue in the storm? And so, in the heat of disagreement, he applies the pause. He listens longer than he speaks. He examines his own motives. He chooses words not to wound, but to illuminate. And if the other refuses reason, the Stoic walks away, not with rage, but with dignity. Love. The Stoic loves without clinging here lies one of the most radical and misunderstood Stoic stances. The Stoic loves deeply, yet without clinging. He opens his heart to connection, to family, to friendship, to romance. But he does not idolize the person. He does not fuse his worth to their presence. He says, I am grateful for their company, but I do not own them. Their choices are theirs. My peace is mine. This is not coldness. This is courage. To love while accepting impermanence. To give fully without demanding return. To protect the relationship without possessing it. To celebrate its beauty without fearing its end. The untrained man calls this detachment. The Stoic calls it freedom. Criticism and praise, emotional equanimity in public life. The Stoic must also master emotion in public. He will be praised, he will be criticized, and both are equally dangerous. Praise tempts pride. Criticism tempts shame, but neither are the measure of a man. So the Stoic listens without addiction. He accepts thanks without dependence. He hears rebuke without collapse. And each time, he returns to the internal question. What does my conscience say? What does my virtue require? Because applause is not always the echo of goodness, and criticism is not always the sound of justice. The Stoic places all public opinion into a proper column. This is information, not identity. When emotion tempts, action. Pause, reflect, rechoose. You will be tempted to send the text in anger, to post the thought you haven't refined, to end the conversation with a sharp exit, to retreat from love at the first sign of difficulty. These are the moments where emotional reaction masquerades as power. The Stoic sees the impulse and chooses again. He slows the act. He breathes the impulse out. He asks, does this action align with my deepest principles, or just my current pain? And then he moves, not from the wound, but from the core. This is real strength, to feel the full spectrum of inner turbulence, and still steer with grace. Emotional mastery is the key to ethical leadership. The world is full of brilliant men who cannot govern their emotions. Their empires rot from within, because their decisions, though clever, are emotionally hijacked. Anger at rivals, ego in negotiations, fear in risk, insecurity in delegation. The Stoic knows that a man who cannot command his inner world has no business commanding others. So he does the quiet work. He trains in obscurity. He cleans his language. He questions his impulses. He refines his presence. And in doing so, he becomes a rare thing. A man who can be trusted to lead, not just because he is capable, but because he is centered. There is a moment in every Stoic's journey when the real test begins. Not in silence, not in study, but in noise, in contradiction, in the world that neither understands nor values his inner discipline. For all our reflection, all our preparation, all our steady breaths in the solitude of morning, it means little if we cannot carry it into the fire of actual living, into the workplace that disrespects us, into the family that misunderstands us, into the unpredictable terrain of life where our principles are not praised but tested. You do not know the strength of your emotional discipline until the world gives you every reason to abandon it. The Stoic carries his mastery not as armor to separate him from others, but as a compass that keeps him from being absorbed by them. While others drown in the waters of chaos, yelling at traffic, collapsing under deadlines, lashing out from stress, he moves through the same waters, not unfeeling, but unflooded, not distant, but undisturbed, because the inner work has already been done. His values are not up for renegotiation just because the crowd has lost its mind. This is when Stoicism ceases to be theory and becomes presence. You enter the same rooms, attend the same meetings, face the same losses, but the way you stand changes the temperature. You listen without interrupting. You respond without defending. You assert without attacking. You feel everything but are governed by none of it. And those who witness you won't always know what to call it. Some will call it calm. Some will call it control. But in truth, it is clarity, earned through thousands of invisible, thankless decisions made in the privacy of your own mind. And that's the Stoic secret. What makes you a master of emotion is not a single heroic act. It's the compound interest of choosing your better nature in moments no one ever sees. When you wanted to yell, but instead paused. When you felt shame, but answered with self-respect. When anxiety rose, but you breathed through it and acted from principle instead of panic. These are the bricks of the unshakable man. No statue is built in a single stroke. It's carved day by day with 1,000 chisels of discipline against the marble of impulse. And what you build is not a performance for the world. It is a temple within yourself. A place you can return to again and again when the world breaks its promises. A center of gravity that no external circumstance can dislodge. Let others be ruled by their tempers, their comparisons, their thirst for control. Let them chase applause and avoid discomfort. You will walk a different path. Not because you feel less, but because you've trained yourself to feel with precision, to act with restraint, and to move with unwavering integrity. That is the final test. Can you keep your emotional sovereignty not only in crisis but in success? Not only in isolation but in intimacy? Not only in loss but in gain? Can you be unmoved not just when others shout at you, but when they praise you, when they tempt you, when they invite you to betray your values for comfort or glory? The Stoic answer is not yes in confidence, but I will train until I can. That training never ends. And it is that ongoing effort, quiet, invisible, often unappreciated, that transforms a man into something rare, a lighthouse in a storm, not swayed by wind, not altered by tide, but steady, luminous, and unbreakable in purpose. That is what emotional mastery gives you, not the end of emotion, but the beginning of your reign over it. Now, if any part of this message has been helpful to you, leave us your like and comment, helping the algorithm recommend it to someone who needs it at this time. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss new videos. And if you look through the videos we've already uploaded, you're sure to find something to take with you. Have a good day.